Welcome back to Justice Reloaded HD. It's always a joy to have you here. Let me ask you something simple, but tender. Do you remember the first time someone adjusted your glasses? Not to fix you, but to see you better? Not to correct your flaws, but to help you feel seen and accepted, just as you are. For a sensitive child, that small gesture can be everything. It's not just about a clearer lens, it's about the moment someone says, without words, "You're not broken. You're enough." And sometimes, that's all it takes for a young soul to lift their head for the very first time, not in shame, but in quiet pride. If you believe that the smallest acts can heal the deepest wounds, go ahead and hit that like button, and subscribe to Justice Reloaded HD so you never miss a story that touches the heart. We're so glad you're here. The restaurant had the charm of a bygone era. Its vintage wooden booths glowed under soft amber lighting, and a quiet hum of conversation drifted like warm steam from coffee cups. Tucked into the far corner of the old Providence Bistro sat Richard Graves, his posture straight as an exclamation point. He was always sharply dressed, tonight in a tailored navy suit, his silver cufflinks catching the light like the edge of a scalpel. Across from him, his 10-year-old son Noah fidgeted quietly, head down, spoon tracing slow circles in a bowl of untouched soup. Noah wore his glasses as he always did, crooked. They perched unevenly on his face, one temple dangling precariously off his right ear. He hadn't noticed they were slipping again, or maybe he had and just didn't want to fix them in public. Either way, the moment was delicate, like the boy himself. Anna Whitmore moved quietly through the room, balancing a tray of desserts like a dancer who knew every inch of the floor beneath her. Her ponytail bounced gently with each step, and her eyes scanned her tables not just for empty cups but for unspoken needs, a habit she never lost from her former life in optical care. She approached Richard's table with the ease of someone who had long stopped fearing silence. "Your chocolate torte, sir," she said with a polite nod. Then she turned to Noah, her voice lowering just a touch. "And for the young gentleman, extra whipped cream, just like last time." As she placed the plate in front of him, her gaze dropped, and she saw it. The glasses. Nearly hanging off his face now, so misaligned it was a wonder he could see anything at all. She paused, just a beat, long enough to notice the boy's fingers twitch as he reached up to fix them. But his hand trembled. Not from cold, but from something older, deeper. Embarrassment. Richard cleared his throat, about to intervene with his usual efficient precision. But before he could speak, Anna knelt beside the boy's chair and offered a smile as light as a feather. "Heroes wear crooked glasses too," she said gently. "But how about I help, just a little, so you can see the chocolate better?" Noah didn't respond. He just looked at her, his eyes wide, and not with fear this time but curiosity. Anna didn't touch his face. Instead, with practiced care, she cupped her hands just beneath his temples, guiding the glasses upward and straight. Her fingers never grazed his skin, only the frame. She moved slowly, deliberately, as though adjusting something far more fragile than a pair of lenses. When she was done, she let her hands fall to her lap. "There," she whispered, almost like a secret between them. "Much clearer." Noah blinked once. Then again. And for the first time, he didn't jerk away, didn't flinch or shrink or mutter an apology for needing help. He simply looked at her. Full on. As though seeing someone, maybe even himself, clearly for the first time. Richard sat frozen, the fork in his hand suspended midair. He'd seen therapists try to adjust Noah's glasses. Teachers. Even himself. Each time, Noah would yank his head back, twist away, sometimes even burst into tears. But now this woman, this waitress, had managed something extraordinary. She hadn't just straightened the boy's glasses. She'd made him feel safe while doing it. And in Richard's world, where results were everything and tenderness was rarely part of the equation, that quiet victory felt monumental. The restaurant had long since emptied out. Only the soft clatter of cutlery being rolled into napkins and the low hum of the dishwasher in the back remained. Anna was wiping down the counter when she noticed something odd, a white envelope, thick and neatly folded, placed beneath the edge of the register. Her name was written on it in bold, precise handwriting. She glanced around. No one lingered in the dining area. But she didn't need to ask who had left it. The air still carried the faint trace of Richard Graves, expensive cologne and something sterner beneath it, restraint. Anna opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single sheet of heavy stationery, cream-colored, embossed at the corner. The handwriting matched the envelope, meticulous, as though each word had been considered carefully before being committed to the page. Miss Whitmore, I would like to invite you to visit my home weekly, not as a waitress, but as someone who understands how to help my son care for his glasses, and perhaps in doing so himself. Richard Graves. She read it twice. Then a third time. No tip. No business card. Just the message, direct but strangely human, and signed with a man's name who didn't usually ask for help. Anna stood there for a long moment, letter in hand, a faint crease forming between her brows. She had been offered odd jobs before. Some well-meaning customers had suggested she teach their kids table manners, even one who thought she should try acting. But this was different. No one had ever wanted her because of how gently she touched a pair of glasses. The next morning, the sun streamed through the front windows of the cafe, casting warm patches across the tiled floor. Anna was filling coffee cups when she heard the soft ding of the doorbell. She looked up, and there he was. Noah. He was standing in the doorway alone, small and still, his shoulders hunched forward like he was bracing for something. His glasses were askew again, teetering on the tip of his nose, almost like he'd let them fall on purpose. But it wasn't just the glasses that caught Anna's eye, it was what was tucked behind the left temple, barely visible unless you were looking for it. A tiny slip of yellow paper. She stepped toward him slowly, crouching down to meet his eyes. "Hey there, big guy," she said softly. "You look like someone on a mission." Noah didn't speak. He just nodded once, then tilted his head so she could see the note better. Anna gently removed the glasses, careful not to startle him, and peeled back the paper. It was childlike, written in pencil, the letters uneven. "Can Miss Anna fix?" Her throat tightened. She looked at him again, at the earnest hope in his eyes, and something in her chest shifted, not because she felt needed, but because someone small and scared wanted to see the world a little clearer. And he had chosen her to help. "I think we can make that happen," she whispered. She didn't think about pay. She didn't ask for schedules or details. She didn't even question how a billionaire's son had ended up at her workplace so early without an adult. Because some moments don't need logic, they just need heart. And for Anna, that note behind a crooked pair of glasses said more than any contract ever could. Every Thursday afternoon, like clockwork, Anna arrived at the Graves estate, not through the front door, but through the side entrance that led to the sunroom, where Noah waited with his glasses always just a little crooked and his spirit a little less guarded than the week before. At first, the visits were quiet. Noah barely spoke, often just nodding or shrugging in response. But Anna never pushed. She unpacked her small bag, a cloth roll of tools, a bottle of lens spray, soft microfiber cloths, and a tiny kit with spare screws, like a traveling optician for one. They started with a mirror. Anna would prop it up on the table and slide it toward Noah. "Let's see the hero in the reflection," she'd say with a wink. Then she'd guide him, gently, patiently, through the motion of adjusting the nose pads, finding the right angle for the frame, checking the balance on both ears. Noah's hands trembled at first, but week by week, the tremor lessened. Next, she showed him how to clean the lenses, not with his sleeve, but with purpose. "Lenses are like windows," she told him. "If you want the world to see you clearly, you have to take care of how you see it too." They turned that simple act into a game, dust hunt. Each armed with a cloth, they'd race to see who could get their lenses the cleanest, Anna often losing just enough to let Noah celebrate. One day, she brought out a miniature screwdriver set and a container no bigger than a thimble filled with tiny silver screws. "Today," she announced, you're officially in training to be your own glasses technician." Noah lit up in a way Richard had never seen before, not just smiling but belonging. As if this ritual of caring for his glasses was also building something deeper, ownership of himself. Before long, he was doing it all on his own. Anna would arrive to find him already seated with the mirror, tools spread out like he was preparing for a delicate surgery. He'd talk more now, too, about school, about the new science show he liked, even once about the kid who used to tease him for his crooked glasses. "He doesn't bother me anymore," Noah said one afternoon, adjusting the temple arm of his frame. "He doesn't even know how to fix his own." It was Richard who noticed the biggest change. He had just come down the stairs when he paused at the hallway mirror. He was distracted, tugging at the collar of his shirt, when Noah appeared beside him. The boy looked up, tilted his head thoughtfully, and said, "Dad, your glasses are a little crooked." Richard blinked, turning to his son. Noah reached up, carefully, gently, and adjusted the frame on his father's face with 2 steady fingers. "You're good now," he said simply. Richard didn't speak. Couldn't. The boy who once flushed red with shame at the slightest mention of his glasses, who would hide behind his bangs, who refused to meet anyone's eyes when his frame slipped, was now offering help. Not just to himself, but to others. And not just help. Confidence. Control. Connection. Richard stepped back, as if seeing his son clearly for the first time, not just the boy he was protecting, but the boy who was now learning to protect himself. Richard Graves stood in the hallway just outside the kitchen, out of view but not out of earshot. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, not intentionally, but something in Noah's voice had stopped him mid-step. It was that rare lightness, that unguarded tone he reserved only for a few people. Fewer still could draw out that kind of joy. The housekeeper was laughing softly at something Noah had said. Then the boy added, almost as a throwaway line, "I wish Miss Anna was my teacher at school. She makes everything easier to understand." Richard froze. It wasn't jealousy. Not at first. It was more like a slow, tightening discomfort in the chest, the feeling you get when a door quietly shuts behind you and you realize you weren't invited into the next room. He stepped back, away from the wall, and returned to his study, though he couldn't remember what he had gone in there for. His eyes skimmed over reports and charts on the desk, but none of it registered. For weeks, he had watched the bond between Noah and Anna grow stronger, the way his son opened up in her presence, the small confidence blooming with every visit. It had been beautiful. Necessary, even. But lately, Richard had begun to feel like a spectator in his own home. He remembered when Noah used to bring him little drawings, hastily scribbled thank-you notes after their Saturday math sessions or field trips to the museum. But now those notes were for Anna. Just last week, he'd found one on the foyer table, a folded piece of blue construction paper with "Thank you, Miss Anna" written in blocky pencil letters. Inside was a crude sketch of glasses, cleaned and straight, and a stick figure holding a screwdriver. That would have been fine. Sweet, even. Except the note had been written the same week as Richard's birthday. And no card for him had arrived. Not even a verbal happy birthday. He hadn't said anything. Not to Anna. Not to Noah. Instead, he adjusted. Subtly. At first, he asked Anna to come only every other week instead of weekly, citing scheduling conflicts. Then he moved Noah's mirror and tool set to the study, assigning a tutor to handle the sessions. He told himself it was about routine structure, giving Noah a more academic environment. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was trying to reclaim space that used to be his, the emotional territory of fatherhood that now felt borrowed, or worse, handed off. He found himself avoiding Anna, not out of anger, but out of quiet, complicated pride. She hadn't done anything wrong. If anything, she had done more than anyone else ever could for Noah. That fact alone made it harder to look her in the eye. At dinner, Richard noticed how Noah's gaze would drift to the door, just for a moment, as if half expecting Anna to walk through it. And Richard would sit there in silence, watching his son twirl pasta on his fork, glasses perfectly aligned on his face, thanks to someone else. There were no confrontations. No harsh words. Just the slow retreat of a man who didn't know how to share the role he thought he was supposed to fill alone. It started with a gym class and a moment of bad timing. Noah had been doing better. Everyone saw it, the way he walked a little taller, how he adjusted his glasses without shrinking into himself. But confidence, like glass, could crack in an instant. During a relay race, somewhere between the second cone and the third, Noah's glasses slipped. They hit the floor with a tiny clatter, almost lost among the squeak of sneakers and bouncing balls. He froze mid-step, his head snapping back, eyes wide with panic. The coach called out, "Keep going, Noah." But he didn't. He crouched, fumbling for the glasses, his fingers sweeping across the hardwood floor like he was searching for something more than just plastic and lenses, like he was trying to hold onto the sense of safety that had been building piece by piece. Laughter erupted, sharp, high-pitched, merciless. A few kids giggled. One pointed. Another whispered something too fast to catch. But what truly broke the moment was the sound of a phone camera clicking, then recording. A mother standing in the doorway had captured the whole thing. The video was short, just under 15 seconds, but enough to sting. "Noah Graves, son of a billionaire, can't even put on his own glasses," the caption read. It spread fast. Not viral exactly, but far enough to reach Richard's inbox that afternoon. He watched it once. Then again. And again. Each viewing tightened something in his jaw. By the fourth loop, his hands were clenched so hard the paper on his desk had torn at the corners. That evening, Anna arrived as scheduled, unaware of the storm brewing inside the house. Richard met her at the front entrance, something he hadn't done in weeks. He didn't yell. His voice didn't rise. But there was a weight to it, heavy and sharp. "I thought we were making progress," he said. "I thought you were helping him prepare for the world, not just polishing lenses and playing games." Anna stood still, her bag of tools in one hand, the other gently resting on her coat pocket. He didn't wait for her to respond. He froze, Richard said, pacing a short line across the entryway. Couldn't even find his own glasses while the entire gym watched. It was humiliating for him, for me. Still, Anna said nothing. She only reached into her bag and pulled out a small square box. It wasn't fancy. A child's drawing was taped to the top in bright marker, a crooked pair of glasses and a speech bubble that read, "I got this." She handed it to Richard with both hands. "He made this himself," she said softly. "Cleaned it. Labeled it. Said it was only for when he needed courage." Inside was the glasses case Noah had decorated weeks earlier, a soft cloth tucked neatly beside a mini toolkit, and a folded note in his handwriting, for emergencies. Or brave days. Richard didn't open it. Not then. He didn't need to. The weight of the box in his hand said enough. He looked at Anna, her expression unreadable, her eyes steady. She hadn't defended herself, hadn't made excuses. She knew what this was. Knew what Noah had lost in that gym. And what, perhaps, he'd still manage to reclaim, on his own terms. For 5 days, Noah went without his glasses. At first, Richard thought it was a phase. Maybe the boy was trying to prove something, to himself, to the world. But by the third day, concern crept in. By the fourth, it bloomed into dread. It wasn't rebellion. Noah wasn't acting out. He was quiet, almost too quiet, and though he never said it out loud, Richard could feel the distance growing between them again, like fog rolling back in after a brief clearing. On the 5th morning, Richard stood by the breakfast table, watching his son push cereal around in his bowl. The light from the tall windows spilled across the marble countertops, and in that golden hush, he saw it, the folded cleaning cloth Noah used to love. It lay crumpled in his small hand, clutched tightly, as if he couldn't decide what to do with it. "Noah," Richard said gently, crouching beside him. "Why haven't you been wearing your glasses?" Noah didn't look up. His fingers curled tighter around the cloth. His voice cracked, barely audible. I don't want anyone to fix them if they don't know what I'm scared of. Richard's breath caught. He wanted to ask what that meant, to press further, but something in Noah's posture, the droop of his shoulders, the tremble in his bottom lip, held him back. He watched as his son slowly unfolded the cloth and raised it toward his glasses case on the table. But he stopped short. His hand hovered over the case, never quite making contact with the lenses inside. It was like watching someone reach for a memory they weren't ready to touch. I see, Richard murmured. You're not scared of wearing them. Noah shook his head. I'm scared of who touches them. He paused again, then added in a whisper, Miss Anna, when she fixed them, it felt like she was fixing me. Not because I was broken, but because she didn't think I was. Richard swallowed hard. His throat tightened in a way that made it difficult to speak. He looked down at the cloth now draped over Noah's small hands, the same cloth Anna had once gifted him, stitched with a tiny sun in the corner, as if to remind him to look up. She touches the glasses like, Noah's voice wavered. Like they're part of me. Like they're not the problem. That was when Richard felt it. Not guilt, not even regret. It was something deeper. Recognition. He had always viewed the glasses as tools, solutions, obstacles to overcome. He had adjusted them, replaced them, lectured about them. But he had never seen them the way Anna did, not as a barrier, but as a bridge. The glasses weren't the problem. The silence was. The fear. The trembling uncertainty of being seen and misunderstood. And Anna, somehow, had made space for all of that. Not with lectures or instructions, but with presence. With care. Richard reached out, laying his hand gently over Noah's. You don't have to wear them today, he said softly. But when you're ready, maybe we can clean them together. Just you and me. Noah looked up, eyes glassy but clear. He didn't speak. He just nodded, slowly, and for the first time in days, unfolded the cloth fully, smoothing it across the table with careful hands. It wasn't a full return. But it was a beginning. The community clinic on the corner of Elm and 2nd wasn't the kind of place Richard Graves usually found himself in. Its waiting room was humble, plastic chairs, old magazines stacked unevenly, a vending machine that buzzed louder than it functioned. But none of that mattered. He wasn't there for comfort. He was there for something else, something quieter. Anna was finishing up with an elderly patient when she saw him. She blinked once, then looked again, as if she needed a second to believe what she was seeing. Richard Graves. Standing in a gray wool coat, polished shoes tracking the faintest trail of snowmelt across the floor. Holding something in his hands, small, square, carefully wrapped in soft fabric. He didn't speak right away. Just waited until she finished, then stepped forward with a kind of deliberate grace that only comes from years of practiced restraint. I won't keep you, he said simply. Anna nodded, her eyes searching his face for clues. There were none. Only a softness she hadn't seen in him before, not weakness, but something warmer. Surrender, maybe. He held out the bundle between them. She accepted it with both hands, her fingers brushing the fabric. It was heavier than it looked, not by weight, but by meaning. Inside was a high-end cleaning cloth, clearly custom-made. Embroidered at the corner was a single word in gold thread, trust. I had it made, Richard said, voice low. Not because I thought you needed it, but because I needed a way to say something, without forcing you to accept an apology I never gave properly. Anna stayed quiet. He continued, almost as if speaking to the space between them. I used to think glasses were just objects, tools to correct, adjust, control. But you, he paused, his throat tightening. You taught me something I didn't know I was missing. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. They're not just lenses, he said. Sometimes they're the only thing a child can hide behind. And other times, they're the only thing that helps him look up again. He exhaled, as if something long stuck inside him had finally loosened. I thought I was protecting him by making everything straight, orderly. But I didn't realize how deeply he needed someone who would see the bend, and not try to fix it too fast. For a moment, the room was still. Then Anna smiled, not wide, not showy, but with the kind of quiet grace that says, "I hear you. I'm still here." She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The next Thursday, Anna returned to the Graves home, this time not as a guest, not as a hired hand, but as someone who belonged. She didn't bring her toolkit. She brought herself. And when she entered the sunroom, she found both father and son waiting side by side at the table, mirror set between them, Noah's glasses already resting neatly on a folded towel. Richard looked up, gestured toward the empty chair. "We thought maybe," he said, clearing his throat, "you could teach us both how to see each other right." Anna nodded. And without a word she sat down, not to fix, not to lead, but to learn. Together. The auditorium wasn't grand. It was modest, lined with folding chairs and lit by warm ceiling lamps that hummed faintly overhead. But every seat was filled. Parents, teachers, volunteers, children with glasses perched at every imaginable angle. Some with one lens taped, some with nose pads missing, some with frames far too big or small for their faces. And yet, every one of them sat a little taller that evening. At the front of the stage, a simple banner hung across the wall in block letters. "Clear view, see yourself proudly." Richard stood near the side curtain, his hands folded behind him, watching the scene unfold with a quiet reverence. Beside him, Anna adjusted the microphone stand for the next speaker. She was calm, confident, the same way she'd always been, but now with a steadier presence, a part of the foundation rather than someone passing through. Then came Noah. He stepped onto the stage wearing a crisp button-down shirt tucked neatly into his slacks, his hair combed, his hands at his sides. But it was his glasses, sitting perfectly straight, not a smudge in sight, that drew the soft murmur of admiration from the crowd. He took a breath as he approached the microphone. It seemed to swallow him at first, the stand looming over his small frame. But he didn't shrink. Instead, he looked straight ahead. "My name is Noah Graves," he began, his voice small but steady. "And I used to think that all I wanted was for my glasses to sit right." He paused. A few people in the audience leaned forward, listening. "Because when they were crooked," he continued, "I thought people saw me as broken. Like something was wrong with me." A hush settled over the room. "But someone helped me learn that it wasn't the glasses," he said, glancing briefly toward the side of the stage where Anna stood, her eyes glassy. "It was how I saw myself, and how scared I was that other people would see that, too." He lifted his chin, a subtle but powerful motion. "Now I don't just want my glasses to be straight," he said. "I want people to look at me, and see that I'm not afraid of being a little off sometimes." There was a pause. A silence so deep, it seemed like the entire auditorium had stopped breathing. Then, a quiet clap. Another. And then the room erupted into applause, not thunderous, but meaningful, the kind that fills a space from the inside out. Richard felt his throat tighten. He looked down at his hand, where Noah's smaller fingers had curled around his just before stepping onto the stage. The boy hadn't let go the entire time until that moment, and now, he didn't need to. Beside him, Anna smiled and nodded once, slow and proud. They hadn't just helped a child straighten his glasses. They had helped him stand tall behind them. And as Noah took a small bow and stepped down from the stage, the clear view banner swaying gently above him, Richard understood something he hadn't before. Sometimes, seeing clearly wasn't about sharper lenses. It was about giving a child the courage to believe that being seen fully honestly was a strength, not a flaw. If you believe that even a simple pair of glasses can become a window into self-worth, go ahead and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to Justice Reloaded HD so you never miss the healing stories we share each week. Thank you for staying with us till the very end. We'll see you next time.